entire week, I had been hearing nothing but the growing hype machine that surrounds the Chiefs' current wide receiver room. From fans to local radio hosts claiming that the Chiefs are just fine with what they currently have. That the Chiefs answered their wide receiver issues in the draft by getting Rashee Rice. Okay. Well, I decided to send out a tweet this last Wednesday, you know me and my tweets, addressing this very take. And I said, quote, "It's fascinating that folks assume that the Chiefs are fine at wide receiver and that these other teams bidding for D-Hop aren't. The Bills have Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. The Browns have Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. The Patriots have Juju Smith-Schuster and Devontae Parker. All of these wide receivers I just named would be the Chiefs wide receiver one." Well, this tweet grabbed the attention of senior NFL reporter and lead content strategist for the Monday Morning Quarterback, Albert Breer, who I have a profound amount of respect for. He said in response to my tweet, quote, "This is the stuff that's crazy to me. Travis Kelce doesn't count," end quote. This is what's so astonishing about Travis Kelce. Kelce is so great and has been so consistently dominant at the tight end position that people at all levels assume that the Chiefs don't have glands at wide receiver. Because to answer Mr. Breer's question as candidly as I can, no, Travis Kelce doesn't count in this regard. And the Chiefs agree with me. How do I know that? Well, let's look at the last 12 to 15 months. Within a 2-month span in 2022, the Chiefs offered Tyreek Hill a contract extension and had an agreed in principle for over $25 million per year before ultimately trading him. They then went and signed Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS while drafting Sky Moore in the top 55 picks of the 2022 draft. Those aren't moves made by a team that's resting on their laurels. Those aren't moves made by a team that considers their tight end a fix-all for their disparity at wide receiver. Kelce is also going to be 34 in October. So although he's profoundly great and should be profoundly great again in 2023, it is dangerously and recklessly irresponsible to assume that he's going to make up for having literally zero proven commodities in the wide receiver room. I also had the misfortune of hearing my guy and the person I look up to the most in sports media, Mr. Nick Wright, share a very different yet in the same vein sentiment as our friend Albert Breer on his respective platform on First Things First this last week. I'm going to play the video for you guys so you can hear it.
Deandre Hopkins is on a Hall of Fame track. I don't want to say he's a Hall of Famer already because I think it's harder than people realize. For receivers and in the NFL. I covered him when he got drafted by the Texans. I got to know Deandre a little bit. I think he's an awesome guy. I think there's a period of time where he had the best hands in the NFL. He might still, and is an awesome player. And the Chiefs do not need him. Oh, man. If they signed him, I wouldn't be like, oh, they screwed up. But
you wouldn't be excited?
No.
Really?
Wow. Yes. Here's why. Because there is an opportunity cost that goes along with signing the aging veteran for a year or two, and that is the stunting of the growth of the guys at his spot. And the Chiefs have spent real resources on very young receivers. They drafted Sky Moore in the second round a year ago. Now he had a down season. And then he scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl and goes into this offseason feeling great. They spent a second-round pick this year on Rashee Rice, who had unbelievable production at SMU, but was not considered one of the 4 best receivers in the class. They spent the equivalent almost of a second-round pick on the trade for Kadarius Toney, who I think is excellent when he's on the field. His issue has been ability to stay healthy. The Chiefs understand that they are going to have to spend their dollars on the defensive side of the ball. And so they need those young players on a rookie contract to be great. So now, and the other thing, Brew, is they're not chasing anybody. They're the best in the league by a wide margin.
Let me first of all reiterate my stance on Nick. There is nobody that I respect more in this field than Nick Wright. He was the guy that, I love my guy Nick. He's the one that got me into this field, and I couldn't respect him any more than I already do. Trevor knows this, and everybody that listens, pays attention to the show knows this. But he is so goddamn wrong on this one. For a lot of reasons. One, he addressed the defensive side about how the Chiefs are going to have to start spending money on the defensive side. No, they're not, because they haven't been. You want to talk about the way the Chiefs have been going about it? The Chiefs have built themselves a young sheep nucleus on defense, and I don't see Brett Veach changing the way he's been drafting and developing his defense anytime soon, because he knows that's the Patriot way. That's how they handled things back with Tom Brady when he was winning championships, and they went and spent money on offensive players and offensive linemen, things of that nature. That's what the Patriots did. That's what the Chiefs are going to do. If you look at the way Nick Wright was talking about, putting so many resources in these wide receivers. Well, how about the fact that the Chiefs drafted Trey Smith and they paid Joe Thuney at the same position a historic amount of money? And they knew Trey Smith was going to be a starter on this team. How about they go and sign Austin Ryder? It wasn't a big contract, but they had him as the guy penciled in to be their starting center. And then they drafted Creed Humphrey in the second round. I mean, there's examples across the board of what the Chiefs have done at certain positions where, you have Frank Clark making a lot of money, and they've drafted players at that position multiple times over the last 3-4 years. So you can't tell me it's because of young resources that they can't go and get veteran players. That's, if anything, it's actually more applicable to do so. But my question to Nick, and anybody that feels this way, this is my question, and this is where I want to take off on this whole thing, Trevor. And I know I'm taking a lot of time here, man, but go with me on this. So, essentially, signing D-Hop, who is a sure thing, would stunt the growth of these young receivers who aren't a sure thing. The Chiefs had literally no one in the way of Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney in 2022. Did any of them grow into a star wide receiver last season?
Right.
You can't assume that any of these young dudes will ever become a star. If winning Super Bowls is priority number one, you have to add sure things. That's DeAndre Hopkins. The Chiefs aren't chasing anybody because they make moves to stay ahead. Signing D-Hop is one of those moves. Why did they trade for Frank Clark? Why did they trade for Orlando Brown? Why did they sign Joe Thuney? They had to stay ahead by getting veteran players to step in and fill in. And furthermore, how are we going to continuously ignore the fact that the Chiefs have yet to replace Juju Smith-Schuster, let alone justify passing up on acquiring D-Hop? Folks do realize that Juju had more receptions, yards, and touchdowns than Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore had combined last season, right? Because he did. And those guys got plenty of opportunities last season. You saw their impact in the playoffs, and I'm not taking that away from them. And I hope they can build off of that. But as I asked a friend of mine this week, who in this current Chiefs wide receiver room can you say with any certainty you trust to go out there and have a big-time season in 2023? If you happen to pick one, tell me, who is having a bigger season with Patrick Mahomes, that guy or D-Hop? We've seen that D-Hop can and will do what he can and will do with bad quarterback play. Imagine what he'd do with all-time quarterback play. Even with an uptick in usage and development, there isn't a single player in that room right now that can match D-Hop's value and production for this team right now. Maybe in 2024 and 2025, but the Chiefs are a team that's trying to rack up as many Lombardi trophies as they can with the Mahomes, Kelsey, Jones intact as their core pieces. That's not going to last forever. So unless I'm mistaken, and the Chiefs are basically taking 2023 off and they're not planning on continuing this year, why in the hell would you turn into this season with an even thinner wide receiver room than you had last season? Could Patrick Mahomes get the most out of these young guys? Could Travis Kelce play all 17 games, play at an all-pro level, and put up 1,000 yards for an 8th consecutive season while not wearing down? Sure. But do you really want to put even more on Mahomes' shoulders? Do you really want to put that much expectation on the soon-to-be 34-year-old Travis Kelce? I mean, shit, Shannon Sharp was one of the greatest tight ends of all time. He retired at 35. As great as he's been and still is, that decline is coming for Travis Kelce. You can't assume that because it hasn't come yet, that it couldn't or wouldn't come as soon as this season. If Kelce were to go down with an injury or just doesn't have the hip fluidity he once had, who's Patrick Mahomes relying on this year? This is what we have to think about, and this is why getting a player at D-Hop's magnitude could be so vital for this team's success in 2023. And look, these young dudes have potential. I love Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore a ton, but they are unproven. I look forward to seeing them prove themselves, but I don't feel comfortable seeing them do so as the guys that Patrick has to rely on heavily, seeing we've yet to see Kadarius Toney play more than 10 games in a season, and Sky Moore had 4 times as many muff punts as he had receiving touchdowns last season. Not to mention only 250 total yards. The fact is, the Chiefs are in absolute need of the same thing they were in need of 3 months ago. A veteran difference-making wide receiver one. You can say I'm being ridiculous, as so many fans have been telling me all week. But if I'm being ridiculous by saying the Chiefs need to add a veteran difference-making wide receiver one to the wide receiver room, then explain to me why every single report that's coming out is stating that the Chiefs are one of the top teams after D-Hop and have been the same since February. We know how the Chiefs operate. If they're not trying to get someone, they're not attached to that player in the news. We would have heard the Chiefs had initial interest, but that interest tapered off for whatever the reason may be. That is no way the case. In fact, it's been the exact opposite. And now that the Bills are out of the race for D-Hop, as I've told folks just last week they would be due to the horrific cap structure in 2024, our guy John Harrison, who's a big follower of ours and a big contributor, broke that down in the comments, and I hope John breaks it down again in these comments, because it's 100% true. The Bills will be in cap hell after this season because of Von Miller, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, all the other big-time veterans are playing.
They're already out of the race.
Yeah, they are. They're 100% out of it.
Yeah.
Brandon Beans multiple times has mentioned that. How many times you heard Brett Veach say that? It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And so the Bills are done, and that was the team that everyone was penciling in was going to take D-Hop just like 4 days ago.
Right.
The Chiefs are the only real option for D-Hop if winning is his ultimate goal and desire. The Chiefs know that, which does give the Chiefs some leverage, but not all. Because D-Hop also knows what I've been breaking down on the show today, and that's that the Chiefs need him just as much.